Welcome to the GreatBase Tennis Podcast. I'm Steve Smith. At the table, we have Ryan Fleming, and on the phone, Dave Anderson. And you guys are just meeting each other for the first time via the phone.
Yes, that's correct.
So we have Dave Anderson, who's a tennis director, 31 years, Dave?
32 years, October 11th.
30.
Actually, the head pro and the academy director, but 32 years, October 11th.
Well, congratulations. Great run. And Ryan, you certainly heard a lot about what Dave's done in Dallas with the staff. And Ryan, I've known Ryan 22 years. I know you couldn't be with us last week, but I know we just spoke a little bit before we went on air. But go back and listen to the podcast. Lots of connections, lots of fun stories. But with Wintergreen, part of the equation for me now is to, I have a home up here and plan on coming back here at the end of the school year. But let me talk a little bit about Ave Maria University. Founded in 2007, I drove on the campus with Johann Fruhling, young German fitness trainer. Been working with us almost 5 years now. Been connected, done this, that, and the other thing. Not totally 5 years consecutive, day in and day out. I mean, he went off and got an MBA, did a graduate assistantship, worked for IMG. He has spent a lot of time with us. Tom Monahan, the founder of Domino's Pizza. He sold his company and obviously transaction like billions of dollars, I suppose. But he has founded a town, a church, and a university. So how I know about Ave Maria, did I say that when we drove out on campus with Johann, he said, the sign says 2007. He goes, the university's still a teenager. My connection, a family, perhaps for privacy, we shouldn't mention their name, but a great, great family, 3 boys. So the mother and father, over 10 years ago, they bring their 3 boys to me. And after that, they never went to a pro. They never went to a program. They just did it on their own. All 3 boys, Renaissance kids, really strong academically, strong with music, and obviously became, strong tennis players, especially the youngest one. The youngest one had the 2 older brothers going down the pathway first. And I mean, there was a waiting list. I mean, if you think of Andrew Rube, who's been a guest on our podcast, the coach at Harvard, he waited and waited, but he turned down many schools, including how many people turned down Harvard? Not too many. Each time the son, so the oldest son goes on a recruiting trip, and the dad would call me up and ask me about my thoughts were on the school, the college that he had visited. But then the dad would give me a commercial on Ave Maria. Dad's a devout Catholic. Dad is, I should say, the father and mother, dad and mom. So the oldest son goes to Ave Maria. Second son, actually, I remember the father asking me about Chuck Creasy because they ran into Chuck at a tournament. So I get a call and, what about the son going to the Citadel? But each time I get the story on Ave Maria. I told the president of the college, not to digress, but as you know, David, I spent from 81 to 91 in Tyler, Texas. I remember talking to the president at one time. We had students from, I don't know how many countries and how many states, and we had enrollment that was well over 100. No chip on my shoulder, right? It's just something I do remember. Prior to being hired, I did at a remote interview with the president of the college. That doesn't happen too often. He talks to everybody who's hired. And I wasn't really even thinking about being the tennis coach. The father and mother of the 3 boys, they're in Virginia, and they pop in this summer to visit. And all the conversations I had, it was the second time. There was a time before where they were looking for a tennis coach. I said, well, let me try to help out. And at that time, I was working with Jackie Calla. It really came right down to it in the end. Jackie, her father, worked with me for 15 years. You would remember Roberta Calla. Jackie played at Amherst, and she was at Syracuse, and she's, interviewed here and there and turned a few opportunities down. But she told me in the end that she'd be interested if I was going to be there, but she didn't want to coach 2 teams because the position is coaching 2 teams. So now, and Dave Secker really helped her out. She's now the coach, the head women's coach at George Washington, and very happy with, and I mean, she's just started. Johann Fruhling comes into it because they needed a coach. And I said, well, they need more time. This is late around, this is sometime at the end of July, and they have to have a coach by the end of August, give or take a few days. I mean, they were down to the wire. So when Johann Fruhling was with us, we got him connected with, and that's how it works, Chad Berryhill. You call people and they said, hey, they got this young guy, he's fantastic. He's got a degree in sports science, wants to make his living in sports. So he went to St. Leo University, got his MBA. So during that time, 2 years, the second semester, so he was there the second semester, Berryhill left because St. Leo was having financial problems, and I think it was cross country and track. They were dropping sports. Berryhill said, well, if they're dropping sports, they may drop women's. He actually was coaching both men and women. So he left and he went to Embry-Riddle. He was very successful. He's successful everywhere he's gone. I mean, he's won national titles and at the junior college level and Division II. So we go way back. He was with us for 5 years. So Fruehling came to the rescue. He became the coach. He's a fitness trainer. Now, his stepfather is in tennis, and he spent a lot of time with us. And he had the one semester with Berryhill, but he was a men's coach. And they ended up, I believe it was, they were the runner-up in the national tournament. I said, well, I got just a guy who could go and rescue the program. He could go because he got an MBA, or he can work in the States till, I know, May 26. So OPT, I always think of OJT, on-the-job training. So if you get a degree in the U.S., you can work for a year. In talking to the athletic director, I misunderstood. He said, yeah, we need physical trainers. I'm thinking, all right, this would be great. But he needed physical trainers. That didn't mean he had the budget for physical trainers. Being a friend of the family of 3 boys, you're connected to Ave Maria. At that time, not only with Jackie Calabit, also Carla Navarro, or Carla Wojcik, who you know is a classmate of yours. She was interested. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll just fly down there. Because I had some conversations with the athletic director. And I said, you're not going to be able to find somebody in 2 weeks. And then I think he really understood that. But the athletic director, John Weisbrot, he's the one who's really put it together, where he had spoken to the president. The president was just saying, which I understand, we have to get a coach. We have to get a coach. When I talked to the president, he said, well, Steve, what do you need? I said, well, it would be nice to have a couple of grad assistants, and I definitely need a classroom. He said, oh, that's all easy, but we need to have a coach. I said, okay, let me think about this. One of the boys of this family of 3, not that he would really know, but he says that Ave Maria is like being back in the 1950s and 60s. And I'm thinking, well, the first 10 years of my life, that was the 1950s and 60s. And God willing, if I could live 10 more years, I'm 70. So I wouldn't mind going back to the way things were in the 1950s and 60s. So there's so many things, was in the back of my mind. And we'll get into college tennis, what I think can be done with college tennis. I said, okay, I've accepted the challenge to go down and be the coach of the men and women's tennis team. I'm going to go there at the end of this week, so I won't really start till October 1. Johan's there. He just flew down. He's going to fly back. So we really haven't represented tennis the way it should be represented. But obviously they've been patient, knowing that you just can't snap your fingers and make things happen. So I've been up here, trying to get things situated with Ryan and at Wintergreen, and that's all been, signed, sealed, and delivered, which is great. Talk a little bit about the athletic director, and talking to him, that was very smooth, because for me, he's a hockey guy. John Weisbrot, he played hockey at Harvard. But, if you're a hockey guy, you're a hockey guy. I don't think of him as a Harvard guy. He's a hockey guy. That's just the way it is. And his team, I think it was 89, they won the NCAAs. Only Harvard team to do so. And then he made it to the NHL. And was through injuries, he had a very short, at the management level, he's part of championships in the IHL, AHL, and NHL. So he's got his name on the Stanley Cup. And then he was a general manager of the Orlando Magic in the NBA. He tells people he can only dribble with his right hand, but he has an amazing background. And so why is he doing it? And it's just a wholesome culture. I mean, it's obviously is a Catholic education. And I actually did this for fun. I wrote down 100 things that would make me the imperfect Catholic. I guess I should digress and tell you a Catholic story now. I'm 27 years old. My father passes away. I'm the youngest of 6. But my father died at the time of year where the ground is frozen. So they have to put the bodies in the morgue. So we're having a meeting, and 6 kids. And my mother says, well, your father's going to be buried in the Link Lane Cemetery. And I said, the Link Lane Cemetery, why? She said, well, that's the Catholic cemetery. I said, well, our cemetery is the one right by the outdoor rink. It's on the same street that we grew up on. And I've got the 1 mile trail, the 2 mile trail. I said, the Evergreen Cemetery is our cemetery. I said, I work for the village. If you remember, I even mowed lawns, painted fences, and sometimes if the backhoe couldn't get in, I dug graves in the Evergreen Cemetery. She said, that's the Presbyterian cemetery. And I said, the nuns told me, Mom, God is everywhere. And I said, if God is everywhere, he's in the Evergreen Cemetery. She didn't say one other word. So then, for the burial, no one knew. I get emotional over this. He was buried in the Presbyterian cemetery. And now she is. Because, God is within. God is everywhere.
Wow.
It's another Catholic story. I just tell you, maybe I'll limit to 3 because I made a list of 100. My Aunt Ronnie, she used to say this. I talk to her. I text back and forth on a daily basis, give this guy a hard time. And he goes, no, I'm going straight to heaven because your Aunt Ronnie's still praying for me. And my Aunt Ronnie, if she said the rosary, 3-4 hours a day. I'm a little kid. I go, it was just, Aunt Ronnie, what are you praying for? And she would say, everybody. And yeah, everybody. Yeah, and especially the Russians. So I used to tell people the reason that the reason communism came to an end was because of my Aunt Ronnie. But anyway, no, I really stopped and think about it. I just thought it was so long ago. But yeah, on both my mother's side, my father's side, had a cousin, relatives became priests. So anyway, back to Ave Maria, college tennis. For me, I don't really like what's going on in college tennis. I think that you two both can chime in on this part of it. I can circle back on. I have some notes in front of me. First of all, I'd like to run the team as an upside-down triangle and combine the club team. So there's 23 sports at Ave Maria. They have club sports and intramural sports. But yeah, just upside down. So have it be based on development. Try to have more American kids playing American college tennis. Doesn't mean that you can't be open to having foreign players play. I've always found it really disturbing and I know college coaches have to recruit, but it's just something a little bit perverse to me. And the profession is so male dominated. So you take a coach in his late 40s and 50s, and he's telling some 18-year-old, this is what you're going to get. Nike and Adidas, and amazing the facilities they have. Why don't you guys chime in and ask me a question? I'll go through my notes here.
Well, you mentioned college tennis. I haven't thought about this before, but maybe it's because I'm not a big fan, but I haven't watched college tennis in quite some time. And so I do think it resonates with me, the idea of college tennis. I like the idea of college tennis being a stage in someone's development that they can really improve and be developed. Yeah, I think that might interest me a little bit more. I hadn't really thought about that.
The NIL, names, image, and likeness. And if that's off the table now, profit sharing. I really, the dream team, the 1992 basketball team, the Olympic spirit, it's not the same as when the 1980 U.S. Olympic hockey teams, all these young amateurs playing. A lot of really good things have come to an end. And I think that the idea of this young guy going, well, it'd be like going back to the 50s and 60s. So once again, God willing, it'd be fun to say, okay, a 10-year project. Now, to reflect, in my career, I've been in tennis for over 50 years, 27 years I've spent on college campuses. One time I was in charge, where Dave knows, he was a student where I was training tennis teachers, so I was a department head. Another time I ran a co-op. That's where I met you, Ryan. Mm-hmm. Meaning that in cooperation, I was allowed to run a business on the college campus. And I'm also going to be able to do that at Ave Maria, obviously do it in a limited way and make the team priority. But I show up, we're already going to have players training with us, which will really help accelerate the culture. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be a little bit of shock to some of the guys on the team that we'll have some gals show up that ready play. And it's always good to have perspective on what your level is. Yeah, the recruiting process. Obviously you want to recruit, but Ryan was saying, I think before we went on the air, that his college coach, Chuck Reese, he was looking for athletes. I look back, being the imperfect Catholic, I would say, well, no, based on my upbringing, I've always considered myself a character Catholic. There's a difference between a character Catholic and a spiritual Catholic. In the end, you're doing what's right. No, I'm excited about it. I mentioned, Johan Fruling, Jackie Calla, Carlin Navarro, Wojciech. It was even at the point where a young guy that I've trained is devout Catholic, Phil Ritchie. And so I made a list, even an Irish guy who you've spent some time with you, right? Fergus O'Rourke was at your place, right?
Yeah, Fergus, yeah.
And so, just again, telling the athletic directors that, just give us some time and I'll be able to find you a coach. And one thing that comes into it is location. It is in Southwest Florida. and it's isolated. It's not quite like Wintergreen where there's only one traffic light, but it's inland from Naples, and it's a small town. Now, something that you've heard me talk about many years, Dave, is and I was coached by the father of three, the family that's so close to Ave Maria, and then by the athletic director, is that the president just needs to get a coach. Doesn't want to hear any, far-reaching ideas. One is Tennis Town USA. Be in a small community, start training parents how to teach their really young children. And how that came about was, Ryan and listeners, when I was with Dave, we had this logo, Tennis Tech, and in the middle said TJC, which was short for the abbreviation, the acronym for Tyler Junior College. So we had the same logo, and the dream was, Tennis Town USA, and in the middle be USA. It was a tennis ball, and on top tennis, and the bottom town. Certainly the club team and the team, to me, will be one and the same. A word that you don't hear very often, my father used to use the word all the time, is prima donna. I've heard players say many times, well, they're not good enough for our practice. I go, you're talking to the wrong guy. We can have everybody practice with everybody. Eventually, you need to court with competitive players. Oh, one thing going back to most of the players that I think would show up, they won't be ready to play as a freshman. They won't be good enough. Mm-hmm. But to get people they want, number one, they want to be there because they want to be there. They want to be there for the mission, whether it's with a college, church, both. Tennis, being number three, it's okay to be number three. That's how tennis was done years ago. I always say Arthur Ashe, Stan Smith, they both won U.S. Open and Wimbledon. But when they showed up to college, they couldn't play. They had a developmental year. And one thing I don't like about college tennis is these coaches who bring somebody in January. Bring someone in January. They arrive January 10th. They're playing their first match on January 17th. To me, that's not development. And coaches even go to the point where they'll save a scholarship, or when they meet with a player, they promise they'll give them this and give them that. They'll even tell them, you don't need to join. You don't need to be with the team in the fall. We just need to come in January. And if you do come in the fall, we'll take care of the tab and we'll send you to pro tournaments, even though they're not ready for pro tournaments. But yeah, guys, chime in on something on college tennis or something about this experience. I'll look through my notes here.
Yeah, I'm excited for you for this project. People that have followed the podcast know that you've had numerous experiences on college campuses and have really been instrumental in whether it was University of Illinois with Jennifer Roberts, Craig Tiley, and many, many other places. Can you tell everybody a little bit just about, it's in the NAIA division of the collegiate programs, and just explain a little bit about that, and going, just in my mind, just going back to Jim Burdick. I know Redlands is Division III now. Steve Wilkinson at Gustavus Adolphus. They both ran NAIA schools before they went D3. But can you just explain to everyone a little bit about what that looks like from your end, NAIA?
Well, I know very little about the ins and outs of college. I wasn't asking the questions. We're not really even concerned about scholarships and how much money they can give players. Certainly you have to help people financially. I understand that. Something else happened not too long ago that came into my mind. In fact, you had sent a couple pros to Atlanta. I was doing, outside of Atlanta, Peachtree, I was doing a training session for parents, players, coaches. And then on the way back from Atlanta, I was in Florida. I was going north. I was down there for a month and was coming back up here to the mountains. But being in Atlanta, I stopped at Georgia Gwinnett. Someone who
Georgia Gwinnett, yeah.
Gwinnett, Chase
Hodges.
Chase Hodges.
Mm-hmm.
I remember him being in the 12s, being a really good player and very competitive. They've won at least 10 NAIA national titles, maybe 10 for the women, 10 for the men. It's just like, wow. He's working with a UTR. So I went there. There was a PTT, a pro tournament, and Robin Anderson played UCLA. I'd sent her to your place at one point. And Maggie Sohns has actually been out to your place as well. So you have a 30-year-old and a 15-year-old. So they were playing. So on the Monday after this workshop, I find myself on Georgia Gwinnett. Beautiful campus. They bought a club down the street. Read it was there. Went back and read about the program, and it was a nice vibe being on that campus and thinking, hey, I remember when I was at Tyler Junior College. I remember my mother saying it to me. Of course, I didn't listen to her. She said, "You should never leave this job." And I said, "Why is that?" She said, "You have no idea what it's like to be around young people." So that was just one thing. But I think there's 240 teams in the NAIA. But I don't really know. I mean, we have researched the rules. Co-op players, the team practices can only be the roster players. Well, it's one of the first things I did was find out about the rules. You never want to break the rules. But, they certainly have the chance to win a national title. For me, I mean, I've already had coaches, parents contact me where their kids can go, full boat to a Division I school. And one of the college campuses I spent quite some time on. Well, actually, of the 27 years, it was a shorter run, but it was a fair amount of time where I was at North Carolina State. And Dave Secker is our go-to guy who's the associate head coach with the women. It had a lot to do with our curriculum for, 15 years now. But at NC State, the head coach, Simon Earnshaw, has done a research project on how do these big-time D1 schools, how do they do producing college tennis players? And again, get myself in trouble, but there's a lot of hype. Mm-hmm. A lot of hype. Well, and you, Dave, you and I know, Dave, combined, we're certainly under 1,000 by a long ways, but well over 500, having developed people who played Division I college tennis. And I like your line that get you in trouble. Is that many times a kid will go off to play college tennis, and you say, "Well, they didn't get worse." There's really a disconnect too. Typically, once a kid signs to play college tennis, you never hear from the college coach. I mean, I've had college coaches calling me every day because you got a blue chip in your corral, and you're their new best friend. And then once the kid signs, you never hear from them. A few more things in my notes here. The school colors are blue and green. You got to like the mascot. The mascot's a bulldog. I think that there's 14 teams in the United States that are bulldogs. There was a team out in California. They changed from the bulldogs and they had the students vote, and now they're the banana.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking of. It wasn't Fresno. Was it Fresno?
It's yellow. What are they? They're the banana something. The banana slugs. Thanks, Phil. Phil from the back corner. The banana slugs. And then the teams are called the gyrenes, which is you take a GI, you take that term, and then you take the Marines, and it's like I love this place. They're calling their teams the gyrenes. At one time that was a derogatory term, but then the Marines, they learned to love it, and now it's highly respected. But the founder is Tom Monahan, and his story. He's, as I mentioned. He's the founder, orphan, age 6 with his brother, raised in a Catholic orphanage. I listened to an interview. He said it was like a prison. It was run by Polish nuns. I do think we have to go back to some of that discipline where I certainly was cracked over the knuckles many times because I went to Catholic school. But through heart and hustle, from $500 to $1 billion empire, but that's where he went forward with his mission. But he was a Marine. That's where that term... or the gyrenes. What's
the population of the entire city?
I would say
under 30?
No. I think I would pick a number out. I'd say right now 7,000, but it's fast growing. It's fast growing community, but it's certainly inland. When I was there for a visit, we stayed in Naples, and that was like 30 or 40 minutes away. So it's inland. So it definitely is a small town at this point. It's not being up here in the mountains where we have not one traffic light. And last year I found myself in Miami, and then Fort Lauderdale and Tampa and Orlando. But it's definitely has that small town feel.
Let me ask you another question, Steve. Would you have an interest, or is there a potential to incorporate a program similar to what you did in Tyler? I've always felt the tennis tech program should have been 4-year minimum for a degree. Would that be a possibility there, or maybe doing something like USTAU there? Have you given any thought to that?
Well, thanks. That's a great question. USTAU, to my knowledge, that's kind of hit the floor. You never hear anything about that anymore. The United States Tennis Association University Program. I remember having set the curriculum up, and had the chance for our listeners, if they were just tuning in for the first time, to revise his curriculum. It's a general recreation curriculum. They had a class, water-related sports, parade management. I was the first semester I had to teach water-related sports. I went to digress. I went right to the YMCA. Said I need to meet with the person in charge. They have 2 tennis courts, and Dave, you probably taught on those courts. And I told him, I said, I will set up a tennis program here for you free of charge, and it will work, and it'll be fun. I said, you got to help me teach this class. I did go to high school. You had to swim a mile to graduate. My mother made me take junior life saving, but I just didn't want to, show up and teach water-related sports. But no, it's a great question. Tennis Academia, the program that you and I were part of, no longer exists. There is Ferris State up in Michigan, Methodist College, and you've hired some kids, Ryan, from Methodist College. And there's certainly some other places where you can create your own curriculum. But I was coached by first the father of 3, and by the athletic director, is not really to bring up Tennis Town USA, to really get involved with the community, and then also training tennis teachers formally, where it's part of the degree plan or a degree plan. So I did that. But no, I actually think what should happen on a college campus is there should be a 3-6. And, through my time on 2 junior college campuses, one for 10 years and one for 15, I know the terminology. To be an adjunct professor, you don't have to be full-time credentialed, and to have a 3-6 class. And if you could do that every semester, be 3 hours of lecture and 6 hours of lab. Now, Dave and I were part of a lab. It basically is the GreatBase. It was a 10-year project, working with our 8 pillars. And okay, this is how we should teach these young people to teach tennis. People just don't learn. They don't practice. They don't have information, and then they don't learn how to apply the information. You can meet with somebody and they get a pretty good handle on tennis information, but can they actually go on the court and apply it? One, I think if someone were to attend Ave Maria University and be part of the program, whether it be the club team or the teams, it's just going to be a byproduct that they're going to learn how to teach and coach tennis. But at the same time, I think around the United States, I think every sport, wouldn't it be great if there were, you'd go from 15 hours to 18 hours. You wouldn't really need the class for your degree plan. And labs are tough. You were in a lab that was 15 hours. And I tell people now I had a choice between 12 hours and 15, and I made it 15. I would have liked to have made it 20. And, someone who has any type of lab to their daily schedule, it really doubles the workload. To digress, I think, our students, so many of them become physicians when they play tennis. Listeners, your kid doesn't necessarily need to go pre-med. If they want to be a doctor, they got to try to go to college, get a 4.0, and then take a year after they've played their college tennis to study for their MCATs. And that's where they can take, the lab sciences that they need to take. But coming back to your question, wouldn't it be great if every college campus had a set curriculum? Tennis needs to improve in America. And how do you do that? Education, education, education. A 3-hour lecture class, that's 3 times a week for an hour. And then also a lab, it's like we've got to have the players 2 hours 3 times a week. And then you could do that. You don't want to bend the rules, the spirit of the rules, break the rules. But athletes are putting that type of time in anyway. They're putting that type of time. And I think on every college campus, college players should give back. All should give back. So if you give, you can get. But I do think that many times what happens is college tennis players, or I should say just junior tennis players, skilled tennis players, accomplished tennis players, I think ideally every junior program should start at the same time. That, especially in the summertime, some places you can't do that because of indoor courts. But in fact, I went there one time with you, Dave, back in the early 90s, I guess. The Richmond Hill Country Club, it's right up there. Maybe it's number 1, is way up there. It's close every year to producing the most top-ranked kids in Canada in junior tennis. But in the summertime, first Richard Hernandez and now Miran Mann, Patrick Jeffrion, they can all start at the same time. So like today, we have a player who's 21, competed at the college level, now trying to be a pro, and we've got a 7-year-old. It all works. It all works. I mean, you don't have the 7-year-old and the 21-year-old go out and play best of 5. But tennis is tennis. A forehand's a forehand. I think perhaps that could happen, but, again, the father of the three boys. Certainly, you mentioned the mom over and over again. She had so much to do with bringing up these three kids, but don't mention that first kid in there. Let's make the team go. And the team, you just don't want to have any teams limping along. You want to get them up and get them running, and that's priority number one. But teaching's information transfer, and over, I told the AD, I said, basically, I'm a dumb jock who knows a little bit about tennis. But that should happen really throughout the U.S., and that should be a model. What else, guys?
Well, I have to say I'm taking this all in. I like a couple things about it that you mentioned earlier. You mentioned a terminology, endurance trip. I think it was before we started recording. But I love that you're going back to your beginning. You said you grew up Catholic, small town, being raised that way, and you told us earlier that tennis is life and life is tennis. There's parallels. It looks like we're going back to the beginning, back to the basics. And it seems to me that's rewarding. It seems to me if I was in your shoes, I would feel very rewarded for decades of good work. Now going back to the beginning, going to a small town, a nice atmosphere. But I also like that for the first time, I'm grateful for Florida heat, because you'll keep coming back here in the summer. And I want to highlight that. You still got you here at Wintergreen, and I'm so blessed for that. So my endurance trip has been a little shorter, but 22 years, and I've wanted to work with you, and I haven't known on what levels that would happen, and we have done so on certain levels. But being a partner here at Wintergreen with you, and getting to see you go down to Ave Maria and start up that new program, there's few things as satisfying as finding yourself where you think you're supposed to be. Where God wants you to be, doing what you're passionate about, and I just have to praise God for that. And this is all really exciting.
Oh, thanks. Go ahead, Dave.
We to go back to the beginning, we may need to do what Andy said and get you that Turkish hair transplant a little bit. But
Ryan's got good hair.
Yeah, I could tell by his voice. It would be fun, and that's where the GreatBase having the kind of funding, unlimited funding. Imagine what could be done, because right now, like an incredible tool for coaches, for parents, would be to have a full-time videographer going right there, start to finish for the first year, having, literally from the time you get to the court to the time you get to your house to go to bed. Because I know what's going to happen. There's going to be a lot of character development. There's going to be obviously transformation in people's games, which will be the vehicle for the character development. There will probably be some weeding out, and then there will be migration of people down into that area, like you said, already looking to bypass and eliminate Division I options to go to a better environment for their development. And I just wish that there was unlimited funding for the GreatBase so that whole thing could be documented, because it needs to be. And it did happen to some degree with your efforts behind the scenes with Craig Tiley at Illinois, a version of what's going to take place down there. It's just an incredible opportunity. If somebody out there listening has the resources or the abilities and the know-how, it would be an incredible way of really telling a story here that that could really help people understand how you got to go into places and change the culture, because that's ultimately what you're going to do. I mean, it's already got a great culture, it sounds like, the school, but you're going to go in there and change the tennis culture, and it'll ripple outward. Everything good always starts at a central point and then ripples outward, I think. And that's one of the mistakes I believe the USTA makes, is they try to throw a giant fish net over our whole country and then pull it in, and it just doesn't work that way. It's got to be rippled outward, rather.
Good point.
Let me circle back on some of those points. Thank you. Hair, funding, and the NCAAs. let me go with the NCAAs. So listeners, Craig Tiley, he took a team from obscurity. They won the national title. I can remember, it's Division I. We have the best program in the country. And I remember telling Tiley, no, we have the best program in the country, Hillsborough Community College. I said, we certainly got to the finals a lot more than you guys did. I like the fact that it's a very small enrollment. They have 23, did I say that? 23 sports, plus club teams, intramurals. I think, like I say, my son, he was so fortunate to be part of, say, Ohio State. I think they're number one. They're way up there with as far as the size of the budget of the program. You mentioned Jim Verdick, who won 15 national titles at Redlands. No scholarship players, but he was both NAIA and Division III. And it was Kirk Guattari. Kirk was listening to this, and he asked Jim Verdick, did you ever think about applying for a big job? And this is, people should go back and listen to a podcast on Jim Verdick. Maybe there's one or two, and then we had his son on. Go into all the details. I mean, 2 degrees from Stanford. He was a Marine. Saying that is that I always wondered if I could have made it as a Marine. I think every young American boy should be thinking, gee, could I have made it as a Marine? I guess I'm going to be a long ways from being a Marine, but I'll be able to coach the team that's called the Gyrenes. The funding. Obviously, I'm not a wealthy man, but as a tennis teacher, one of the first things I did was donate $10,000 to the school. I certainly would get an F in fundraising for GreatBase, but that's going to be very much part of the job is fundraising. And I do think that your idea of filming and letting people know what we're doing, coaches will be welcome to come and study and watch what we're doing. And it will definitely be different. It will definitely be different. There's only 6 tennis courts right now. Only 2 courts have lights, and that's not a problem. Biblical teaching, less is more. Less is more. The more you're given, the worse it is. But coming back to hair, Fleming's got really good hair. So actually, Ryan and I've done a lot of things together. I've said, Fleming, get up here, stand next to me. And we think about, we haven't worked day in and day out, but we've done a lot of different projects together. And I always tell people I've always wanted to work with Ryan because I have great insecurities.
Is that why you had me cut my hair?
I said, well, no, that was just through the interview process.
Right.
That's where I'm going back in time. I said, hey, Fleming, I think if you shaved and got a haircut, you have a better chance of getting the job. I know now it's fashionable for men not to shave, but that back in the day, that was a big part of my challenge with training tennis teachers. It's okay to grow a beard that's well groomed, but you don't want to look like you just got back from a 3-day fishing trip. As a tennis teacher, you're always on call. You're going to see people in the grocery store. You're going to see people everywhere. But then at the same time, when I was training tennis teachers, John McEnroe was endorsing big razors for millions of dollars, and or I would guess lots of dollars anyway, and he wasn't shaving. But I said, if you're winning Wimbledon, you don't have to shave. But that was back in the day. But anyway, back to Fleming. I said, well, he's shorter than I am, which this is all sarcasm. He's shorter than I am. I got much better hair. I'm better looking. I play much better. That's why I have Ryan around. I try very hard to get laughs. It's just adults will laugh at my jokes. Juniors don't really laugh at my jokes. But on the funding, I know the tennis facility will need a facelift. And one thing, as a side note, is people would think this is strange, but on a campus like that, Naples, I've been told, which is so close. It's not that close, but it's close. It's the closest city and such. That pickleball is king. Naples is saying, they're the capital of pickleball. I've talked to Ryan now. He's the director up here at Wintergreen. That pickleball and tennis need to be united. Prevention of injury, how the sports are taught. Yeah, there's certainly some nuances. Roller DeHart, who he was part of our program since the time he was a beginner in tennis, got to be one in the 18s, won the NCAAs. His wife, Megan, she's doing really well as an instructor. So, someone like that who's now playing pickleball, both of them. We had Rachel Rohrbacher, who we coached from the time she was a beginner until she was really, nationally acclaimed junior. And she's been top 10 in the world in pickleball. On our podcast, she said, thanks for teaching me Eastern grip. So at a facility like that, it's like, okay, we need to have a pickleball facility. They need to have their own facility. Tennis is tennis. You just don't want to have pickleball invading tennis. There's only 6 tennis courts. So hopefully taking priority with those. I think it will become a great platform for the GreatBase, because we need to not only raise money, but with the monies, helping obviously what needs to take place on campus with the teams, but helping the community, and then helping tennis nationwide. And, a story like more American kids playing American college tennis, taking kids that, we want to have people that come in with the right mindset, the right spirit, the reason they want to be there, but let's get better, and they certainly, there's rules. They're student athletes, and the academic side comes first, but let's get better. Whether it's through the club team. I was at NC State, and unfortunately, it didn't continue it after I left. But when I was there, I went right to the club team. And I remember having a young guy work for me who got a 36 on the ACT. You want to surround yourself by people who are smarter than you. When I was working as a volunteer at NC State, I was doing free clinics for the club team. Let me say this with Dave Secker, challenging him is tennis taught better now with Dave Secker, or was tennis taught better when Matt Clore and I were there? So 2 versus 1. So I think he would laugh at that and go, yeah, it was, we had a pretty good run with coaching juniors. Matt Clore, if you listeners don't know him, he just got back from being with the Fed Cup team. He's not the captain of the team, but he's been traveling as a coach. So he's has a senior position with the USTA. But he's someone who certainly, I've known him as long as a tennis intelligence applied has been up, because he recruited my son when my son was like 16 years old. So I knew of Matt before that, but I've known him. So now my son is, it's almost 20 years later. But there's someone who gets frustrated when they're asked or hears a question, are you a great baser? Great baser. We should have called it perhaps solid fundamentals. But no, I think with, college coaches that we've worked with, so many, but you think of, say, just in Texas alone, Steve Denton at Texas A&M, he hired me when he came off the tour. He's had a lot to do with our program. Bruce Burke, he just went through a few workshops when he was under Craig Tiley. He's at the University of Texas. And coaches like that at such powerful, fantastic universities, high-profile athletic departments. There's all sorts of wannabes. And, it really comes right down to it. It's not in the cards for right now for you to play at the University of Texas or Texas A&M. If they are interested in everything that Ave Maria stands for. So I like that part of it. I have a brother who wrote 10 books on hockey. The first one he didn't dedicate to anyone, so I gave him a hard time. Second one he dedicated to my grandfather, who gave me my first pair of hockey gloves, or bought me new hockey gloves, something like that. And then the third one said, I'd like to dedicate it to my father. If my father understood the true meaning of sport, participation. That's very healthy. I think Julian Krinsky does this so well. Hey, Steve, this is how you coach advanced players. I say this all the time in the podcast. Is Julian, he just hugs his racket and just leans back. And, that's how you coach advanced players. You just hug your racket and you kind of just say, okay. But to get to work, and, there are a lot of kids who will have to reinvent how they play. It's like, okay, they're going to come in. Typically, a lot of young kids will come in where they have experience in tennis. They don't know it, but they don't have an education. But yeah, let's wrap it up. Anything else? Let's go to Ryan, back to you, Dave. And
I think it's going to be a incredibly stimulating thing for you and the people that are around you. Why don't you just share what it's going to look like? Are you going to have a tennis house where people can come in and board again, and much like you have, in Tampa or Wintergreen or other places? How is that going to look for visiting people, Steve? Have you ironed out those details yet?
Well, coming back to my coaching, Mark Mittendorf is the president. No, I talked to one of my close friends who's done really well in real estate, started in tennis, and for Tennis Town USA in the community, there needs to be more courts built. So I went down and with Johan made us. Certainly you could do so many things just by Google Map and getting on the internet, but yeah, people need places to stay. With I thought it was interesting in some of the dialogue with the co-op students. Is right now they don't have any dorm space. But it was positive for me just to hear that. In all fairness to 2 athletic directors that I worked for, one at Tyler Junior College and one at Hillsbury Community College. I think this is very typical at a junior college, is they didn't have a background in sports. It was kind of an add-on. They had an academic background and they were just the person who was put in charge of athletic departments. So obviously junior colleges don't have the budgets. That's something that, I think is a nice challenge about Ave Maria, is that it's not Notre Dame. I mean, it is a Catholic university, but it's not Notre Dame from an athletic standpoint.
Let me ask you one question, Steve, before we sign off. Though, let's time travel 10 years from now. what would you consider a good point to be at in 10 years? What would you like to see a decade from now?
You got to really think about, okay, how many lives can you touch, just individual by individual, case study by case study. I mean, how much did you help that kid? I think with coaches, can you put your head on the pillow at night? But no, I mean, I already have, people ask me, well, we have a player who wants to become a pro. Well, Ave Maria is not going to have the bells and whistles of a big-time Division I program that, say, through revenue sharing, besides giving you a full scholarship, we're going to give you $20,000 cash. I just don't like that. Where's that all going to go? I don't know. But, if somebody wants to be an ATP player or WTA player, that would be a unique family that would say, we're going to do this. Someone's already pointed out to me is that, well, a Division I team, right now they're limited to 25 days. Now, they certainly, that's team matches. They certainly can play fall tournaments and send their players here and there. The one thing about the location is someone wants to be in Southwest Florida and they want to get connected to playing, and I think that's one of the best things about what's going on now with the spin-off of the UTR, these PTT tournaments. That is a little bit like what goes on in France. You're not playing for ATP points, you're not playing for WTA points, but there's money involved. And that brings players out of the woodwork. There's different ways to get up to the top of the mountain. If someone did want to become the best tennis player they could be, obviously they'd have to honor everything that they would have to do to be an upstanding student at Ave Maria. But, for me, I go in and look at a facility with 6 tennis courts. It's like, well, we'll start practice at sunrise. The club team and the team practice together in the evening under the lights. Only 2 courts have lights. So say on 4 tennis courts, open play, have 1 ladder. I'd love to be on a college campus and ask who would win. The number 1 player on the women's team plays the number 12 player on the men's team. Who wins that match? That match never happens because of the macho male ego. If I was on a college campus, I would make that match happen. I mean, you would play everybody. And I would want to go back to, some players, they're going to get videotaped initially and we're going to say, your game's a train wreck and you got to go back to the drawing board. And that's typically what most freshmen should have to do. Is, okay, we're going to teach you how to play. Most freshmen will come in and they play doubles the wrong way since they picked the racket up. They don't go to the net. They don't even know how to hang on the racket. The players, Johan Fruhling's down there right now and he's just observing. And he's a fitness trainer, but you can just look at someone's ready position. Be brilliant with basics. But I loved what used to happen on college campuses where, say it was a Tuesday, Wednesday, you and Ryan are both really good players, and you're on court number 1 because you're in the top 4. But you're going to play 2 matches, one on Tuesday and one on Wednesday. If you win on Tuesday, you're on the very top court. You're going to get to stay on that top court because you won your first match. But if you lose the number 3 and number 4 on that court, whoever loses has to move down a court. And then if you did that the right way, the person who loses at a certain point, say you're only going to have, these are the 8 players that are on the team. These are the 8 players who are going to travel. And number 8 has to play. It can't be one set, but it has to be, well, if a person challenges, the number 9 player challenges beats the number 8 player, well, you get to play him again. If you do it twice, you're now the number 8 player. Challenge matches have really gone away in college tennis. I just think that, not to be sacrilegious, but they're playing God saying, well, I'm just going to make the lineup. My oldest brother used to say that about hockey. He was so political. Like, if people are wrestlers, you just wrestle off and whoever wins gets to wrestle representing the school. 10 years, it was a model program, and, to have coaches actually come and train. We do that all the time, but if more coaches were to do that, it's so much better than going to a conference. I've been a member of the USPTA, PTR, tester for both over 40 years. And I was certainly this week, I think it's Hawaii. I was recently in Hawaii and spoke at a USPTA conference. And, I would love to be there because you're going to learn. There's 15,000 people within the USPTA. Now it's the RSPA. You're not going to learn too much. When it comes down to, you're in a lecture for 60 minutes, 90 minutes. Our number 1 mentor, Braden, used to say, yeah, I spoke to 50 people, shared 50 points. They misinterpret 50 different ways. Do the math. John Weisbrot, obviously he's a graduate of Harvard. I have a connection to Harvard having taught tennis there. And my son Connor one time was with me, and I'm lecturing in this really nice facility, and Connor fell asleep on the pole vault pit. And I said, Connor, just remember, because he helped me with some demos. I said, just remember, we'll always be able to tell people we taught at Harvard. Yeah, thinking about Dave Fish. Dave Fish is a longtime coach at Harvard. Such a smart guy. He's always said that in tennis in the U.S., to improve tennis in the U.S., you need to improve competition, and you need to improve instruction. So with that, with competition, he stepped down. He left the UTR. He very much launched it. Dave Howell put it together, put pen to paper, did the math, built off the French system. And Fish really, he launched it, spent so much time. It was supposed to be free, supposed to be for making tournaments genderless and ageless. It was supposed to be but it has improved. There's a lot of negatives like anything, but there's some positives. UTR has made an impact on tennis. I guess they have the largest email in the world. Like Wayne Bryan, who you talk about all the time, like when you walk around the block, how many people can you play? Oh, you get on your bicycle, you go a little further. Oh, your mom's going to give you a ride. I mean, these 12-year-olds flying all over the country to play tournaments. It's just like, no. So the instruction, coming back to the 10 years ago, I was there many times, but when the Swedes had 6 guys in the top 10, I was teaching tennis in Germany. He said, okay, I'm going to Sweden. I'm just going to go from club to club. And what is going on in Sweden? But at one time after the Borg phenomena, and Borg was the mystery. It's okay, Borg was Borg. But then when Wielander came up in his age group with Nystrom and Sundström, and you guys can name a few more of them, they trained 10,000 people to be animators, tennis animators. It's really not that complicated to demonstrate high, low, high, inside out. Years ago, going back to the 1950s and 1960s, I played baseball. I remember saying to my mother one time, I just wanted to shoot pucks in the driveway. I don't want to play baseball. And she said, it's un-American. You got to play baseball. It wasn't fair for girls way back when, but I would think that would be great in 10 years' time. We've had kids hit the ball really well. I know you have kids hit the ball really well. We have a 7-year-old here that, people kind of drop their jaw when they watch him hit balls. And I said, it wouldn't be nice if we had 100 kids, 1,000 kids, 10,000 kids in the U.S. And granted, the dad and mom are doing so many things to help this kid get better, making sacrifices. But he's getting a lot of reps. But he knows the grips. He knows the ready position. And I think that's what should happen, is that the American public, the consumer, needs to be educated. Parents are just blindly writing checks. And I know you got to sign off. We can all sign off here, David. Braden used to always say, if you can afford your own tennis lessons, social economic functioning levels, unless you inherited the money. And then he would tease, he goes, well, most pros can't afford their own lessons. It's just like a kid. You can't fool a kid, but a parent, if they pay attention, and, we make these videos, these slow motion analysis, kids, for example, they're playing year in and year out. Now they're just coming out of the 14s, they're going to the 16s, and they still don't know they have a palm up serve. And that's where we just pound it in. Crummy's playing crummier. Who wins? Crummy wins, but Crummy doesn't know they're crummy because they beat crummier. So yeah, education. But no, thanks for listening. I hope, we have a large network. I hope people within the network can reach out and help support what we're going to do at Ave Maria University. We need to first help the students that are right in front of us. Second, we need to help people within the community. But if we do it right, make it a model that we can improve tennis teachers who want to come and visit. All right, Fleming. Fleming's got good hair. I think we should be only bald people on this podcast. What do you got, Fleming? Anything else? Wrap it up.
Yeah, I would say to our listeners, I would say pay attention. Pay attention to this next year. I think David brought up a good point. If we had unlimited funding, we could do something like video it from day one till the end of the first year. And you've done a lot over the last 50 years and turned programs around. And a lot of people who know you haven't seen that in action and seen the nuts and bolts of how something can be turned around like that. So I'd say to our listeners, pay attention, keep track of what's going on in Ave Maria and over the next year, and you can see how GreatBase works.
And I hope to bring players from Ave Maria to the mountain.
I would love it.
In the upcoming summer. Go ahead, Dave. We'll wrap it up.
No, I think it's going to be a very cool, great for you, great for tennis, great for the university. I don't think they realize what they have coming in an incredible way. And the fact that you're able to get out of there and get back up to Wintergreen, and you and Ryan hammering it out together up there in the summer months. I'm happy for you, and wish you all the best. Now I'll come visit you in the winter now that you're in Florida.
No, thanks. And appreciate Ryan being part of the podcast. Dave's a regular. Get a lot of positive feedback having you be part of this. We'll continue with these podcasts from Florida, but then we'll be back. But listeners, I hope you got something out of this, as we say, tennis treasure chest, and add some golden nuggets. But Ryan, thanks. Dave, thanks. Listeners, thanks. Phil, Yvonne, everybody, thanks. Adios, amigos.
Have a good night.
Good night, guys.